If you're new around here, you won't understand this conversation, but feel free to go back, check out my video here of me making this, and you'll understand the next part of what I'm going to talk about. I finished the shirt. I did the buttons. Apart from this last top one, I think what's caused the problem is all the layers in this part here, and the buttonhole bit has then just had a lot of resistance. I love her. She just is, the sleeves are beautiful. I'm really, really pleased. So I'm actually going to wear her. It's great. So we can move on. I'm making a draught excluder. Now we have a door in our house that goes out to the porch, and there's a big gap by the bottom of the door, and it gets really, really cold in the winter. So we need a draught excluder. Now in Dunelm, they currently have all of those in there, but they are £14 for a sausage of fabric. It's the easiest looking sewing project that exists, and I refuse to pay £14 for something that I know that I can make really, really easily. It will use up some of my existing fabric that I have. It will use up loads of my scraps in my scrap box as well, which is another win. Plus it will save some money, and it will make the house and the doorway warmer for winter. So all round an essential sewing project for me to complete. So it should be, famous last words, super straightforward. So let's have a little look of how we're going to do it. Okay, we are in the fabric stash area, and this section here, this is my upholstery fabrics. So I've got some options, quite a few options. There's a lot of like velvets in here. I've got a lot of this blue by the looks of it. So I might have to go with the blue. The green is nice. The grey is a bit boring. And yeah, I think it's going to have to be the blue because that is what I've got the most of. So let's go with blue. Start by measuring the size that you want the excluder to fit to. Mine was 77 centimetres by 10 centimetres. Then add on your seam allowances. I like to do a 2 centre seam allowance on each of the edges. And then you need to allow for the stuffing allowance to give you room to be able to stuff it, which I had 4 centimetres for. Now, I did forget to add them all together properly. I ended up missing off a 2 centimetre allowance on the length, but it worked out all okay. But ideally, it could have been a little bit longer than it came out. I really took my time with the measuring, making sure that I was parallel to the selvage so that my lines came out super straight. It will make it a lot easier to match up when sewing. They're just simple rectangles, so they shouldn't be too complicated. I did use my clear ruler, which I absolutely love in terms of marrying lines up to make sure they're super straight. And then we just cut out the rectangles. I've got my new scissors here, which are from Lidl, which is a budget supermarket here in the UK, and they're really good. I'm really impressed. So the 2 rectangles are all cut out. Then I'll be popping them right sides together, sewing them all up, and then off we go. So I've cut out my 2 strips. So now all I need to do is put them wrong sides together, sew around probably, I would say, the long, the short, and then the long, leave this one. I might do into the corners here actually, because you don't want to leave joins on corners because they're sort of high stress areas. So I want to make sure maybe just to leave like that part maybe to close up at the other end. Now the Dunelm one does come with a zip, so I'm assuming it then makes it removable so that you could wash it, and then everything's encased inside in a sausage. I don't really care about that. It's just going to sit on the floor by the door, so I'm not going to bother doing that. I'm just going to close it up at the end after, and then it'll be good to go after I've stuffed it. I'm going to sew these 2 together and then we will stuff it. I've decided it's too boring. Like I don't want it plain. So I am a Cricut user. I love my Cricut machine. In my little stash of things, I wanted something to jazz it up a little bit. So in previous crafting projects, I have, with leftover scrap heat transfer vinyl, I've used a little cutter, like the little paper shape cutters, and I have loads of scrap, tiny little sparkly stars in HTV. So I'm going to put them all over it. I need to turn my heat press on, and then I will press all of the stars, and fingers crossed they will go into the velvet. Velvet can be quite tricky sometimes to kind of get heat transfer vinyl to stick. Turns out I didn't have enough scrap in my box and not the right materials to go in. So I ended up using a bed sheet that I no longer needed anymore. It was quite tricky getting it all in, but I got there in the end after a lot of fussing.